you, every time that I mentioned their father, they would just flinch.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Moore, wasn't the winter coat that you claimed you were deprived of really a fox coat that cost in excess of $1,500?
For your information, sir, fur happens to be very practical, but I would have bought something else.
And wasn't the car that you were deprived of really a Cadillac Coupe de Ville, which you said was the only car you drive because your friends all drove them?
It happens to be a very good family car. It is very safe, and it is very reliable, sir.
Mrs. Moore, do you and your friends meet at a bar called the Society Grill for drinks every single day?
We occasionally meet to talk and not to drink.
And were you drunk the day that Anthony took the children away from home?
Absolutely not. I had had one glass of wine.
Isn't it true that you closed the joint savings account you and your husband had and put all the money into your own name?
What else was I going to do? He was going to give the rest of our money to these people, and it wasn't even a secret account, by the way.
Well, before your husband left, didn't you have money from your household expenses put into an account in your own name?
When he started acting crazy over every penny I spent, that was all I could do to protect myself and the kids.
Well, would you tell the court how much money you've stashed in this little account?
It was $15,000, and
Yes,
part of that is my mother's money, and it is for the kids' education.
Have you finished your answer now?
That was for the kids' education.
All right, now, counsel, let the witness finish the answers to the question.
Yes.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
While Susan Moore leaves the stand, we have time for a short break. On behalf of Susan Moore is her friend since childhood, Shelley Weiss.
Mr. Sears.
Thank you. After the Moores moved to your neighborhood, did you notice radical change in Mr. Moore's behavior?
Yes. One night, Susan had a few of us over for a cocktail party. And when Anthony came home, he started pouring all our drinks down the sink and giving this lecture about this universal bigness or something. I don't know. Nobody wanted to hear it. And then when Susan tried to shut him up, that's when he really humiliated her. He went into the kitchen, got a sponge, came out and washed all her makeup off. It was too embarrassing for words.
Did Anthony ever vent his explosive temper against you personally?
Yes, he did. See, I have this little business where I sell beauty products at parties that I give, and, well, I had a couple of the girls over, including Susan, and this one day, Anthony just burst in, and he grabbed my sales kit, threw it into the fireplace, and we all had to sit there and watch my whole product line go up in flames. I should be suing that lunatic myself.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Miss Weiss, what kind of a place is the Society Grill where you and your friends meet?
Well, it's the most in place in town. I mean, you practically have to know someone to get in there. It even has an unlisted phone number.
Well, doesn't it have a reputation for its hard rock music and its cocaine?
Objection calls for hearsay.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Ask your next question.
Yes, Your Honor. Isn't it a fact that Anthony Moore became upset that his wife was spending so much time with you at parties only after he saw you passing around white powder and little spoons?
He's out of his mind. That never went on there.
What kind of party was Mrs. Moore throwing the night her husband washed off her makeup?
It's a cocktail party.
Wasn't it really a swap party where couples exchange partners for sexual purposes?
Some of that goes on in this group, but not that night. And Susan was never...
Mrs. Weiss, what exactly were you selling at the party where Anthony Moore burned your sales kit?
Female beauty products.
Female beauty products.
Yes.
I'd like to show you a little item. Is this one of the female beauty products you were discussing?
Yes, there's nothing wrong with that.
Your Honor, may I have this marked as Exhibit A and introduced into evidence, please?
Will be so marked.
And how much did this little beauty product cost?
$65.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Anything further now from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
All right, call your first witness, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I would call Anthony Moore, please.
Mr. Moore, step forward.
And now taking the stand is Anthony Moore, the defendant, who is countersuing on grounds of mental cruelty and also seeks custody of his children. He claims his wife was irresponsible, spent incredible sums of money, and was morally bankrupt.
All right, Ms. Smith, let's proceed with this witness.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Moore, what were the early years of your marriage like?
Well, I never felt that our marriage had been connected to the universal path of truth and light. I mean, it was morally corrupted by an unnatural desire for material wealth.
Would you please be a little more specific?
Well, my wife, Susan, had this compulsive desire to spend money to keep up with our neighbors. Her friend, Shelley, was instrumental in this. I mean, our children had to wear $50 designer T-shirts because Shelley's children wore $50 designer T-shirts. We had to join the most expensive country club over in Westville because that was the club that Shelley belonged to, and this just went on and on.
Well, did you try to control your wife's spending?
Yes, I made up a budget, a weekly budget. She had an allowance, but she would come to me and say, I need more money, and it was always for the children, so I gave it to her. But I never saw this money going to the children. What I saw was more designer clothes, more gold jewelry, more Italian figurines, which Shelley had announced were the thing that you had to collect this year. And
is that what destroyed your marriage?
I'm afraid so. I saw my wife becoming a morally corrupt swinger right before my very eyes, and then she was hanging around with Shelley's crowd. These people have absolutely no morals whatsoever. They were into the fashions, the fast cars, the alcohol abuse, the drugs, expensive drugs, all kinds of stuff like that, swinging sex parties. And she was, as I said, becoming a swinger, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it.
Did you confront her?
Yes, I did. I asked her if she could please change this, but she wouldn't even talk to me about it. So I decided that I had to find some other path to happiness and peace in my life other than this. And when I found the universal path, they showed me a life that was healthy and peaceful. It was something that I didn't even know existed before.
Well, would you please explain to the court what the smoky smell was that your wife testified about?
That was incense. It's used to purify the spirit. Every religion uses it. It's used when you meditate or when you chant. I mean, the Catholic Church uses incense.
And what happened the day that you took the children from the house?
Well, I came back from a spiritual retreat, a weekend of yoga, and I found Susan drunk in our house. She had been over at the Society Grill with her friend Shelley, and she was bragging to me about how they had been drag racing around in a Corvette in her drunken condition. Well, I talked to her, and I asked her if she wouldn't please come with me over to the universal path and perhaps straighten out her life. She said she'd rather be dead.
And what happened then?
Well, she passed out. That was the end of that conversation. I looked at the children and said to myself, this was no environment for them. So I wrote a perfectly lucid, logical note, left it on the table, and said that I was taking the children to be with me temporarily.
And now you've decided that they should be with you permanently, is that right?
Yes, I have. I think that I can provide a better atmosphere for their young lives than the sex and drugs and alcohol and fast life that she's been leading them into.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Moore, when you made your decision to quit your job, a decision which would have consequences for your entire family, did you even bother to consult your wife?
I talked to her about it, but ultimately that was my decision. It was my job. I am now employed by the Universal Path Communications Organization, and I make enough money to support my family just fine.
You've also complained bitterly of your wife's spending. Doesn't it seem hypocritical when you turn around and give your family savings to so-called non-materialistic religion?
No, not at all. The money that I gave them was a donation. It wasn't all of our savings. It was money that I had earned, and it's going to spread peace and happiness throughout the world, not just in our little circle.
And meanwhile, you had your family eating meals of brown rice because you said meat was too expensive. Isn't that true?
I wanted them to get off of junk food, hamburgers and tacos. They don't just eat brown rice, and the doctor will tell you that too much meat is not good for you.
Isn't your moral outrage about sex swap parties also somewhat hypocritical, considering the press has reported that the Universal family members get to know each other by an initiation group sex orgy?
Sir, if you believe everything that you read in the newspaper, you are obviously not as intelligent as I think you are. That is complete nonsense.
Is it also nonsense that the cult discourages individual parenting in favor of the group approach so that children don't have a mom or a dad, but 16 of each?
It's not a cult. And yes, we do encourage that. We don't deny any child who their natural parents are, but we feel that it's important for a child to grow up with a series of a number of adult role models.
Doesn't your group advocate the use of illegal drugs?
Absolutely not. Under no circumstances. Introducing drugs into your body is a form of spiritual and physical suicide.
Well, sir, aren't some members of your faith involved in the politics of legalizing marijuana?
Yes, they are, and I'm totally opposed to that, but it has nothing to do with our religion.
And isn't it true that the children were made to fast during the week that they were at your residence there?
We fasted 1 day a week. That cleans out your body and your spirit.
Weren't they also denied sleep?
No, they were not denied sleep. The adults sleep about 4 hours a night. The children, 6 hours. If they need more, they can take naps during the day. Too much sleep is also unhealthy.
And, sir, isn't the deprivation of sleep and food a common tool of brainwashing?
Objection, Your Honor. That's pure speculation. My client isn't an expert on brainwashing.
Overruled. You may answer that question.
Well, I am not an expert on brainwashing, but I can tell you that my children are perfectly normal and healthy.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Do you have a new name with the Universal Path?
Do I?
Yes.
No, I haven't done that. They have nicknames. The children had nicknames.
All right, you may step down. Call your next witness, please.
While Anthony Moore leaves the stand, we have time for a short break. We return now to divorce court. About to testify on behalf of Anthony Moore is his father, the Reverend Lester Moore.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Reverend Moore, did you approve of your daughter-in-law's conduct as a wife?
Not really. Susan was so busy making social plans, she had no time for the kids. When I stayed there, I wanted to take her to lunch, and she said she couldn't be seen in that old car of mine, and I had to get a taxi. And then we had to go to an expensive restaurant where she promptly ordered a bottle of champagne for herself and talked around me to her friends. They were telling lewd jokes, talking about snorting up right in front of me.
Now, as a minister, did you approve when your son joined the Universal Path?
Well, when I first heard about that, I was concerned that maybe it was some kind of wacky cult, so I investigated it myself.
And what did you find?
I found a group dedicated to clean living, good, hard physical work, and peaceful coexistence.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Reverend Moore, doesn't your son have a history of running away from responsibilities to join strange groups?
Certainly not.
Didn't he leave school to join a motorcycle gang?
Well, he was only 16, a kid. That didn't mean anything.
Isn't it true, Reverend Moore, that your son also had a history of a drug problem?
Well, he did get himself involved when he was a teenager.
And just how was it that you knew he was on drugs at the time?
He had a personality change.
Can you describe that change for us, sir?
He suddenly seemed to hate everything his mother and I stood for. He totally withdrew from us.
And wouldn't you say that recently he's been acting exactly the same way?
No, it's not the same.
Isn't he withdrawing from the family and rebelling against their perfectly normal lifestyle? Isn't that the same?
Not at all the same, no. Susan's lifestyle is one big party.
No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Anything further now from the defendant?
No, Your Honor. Defendant rests.
All right, Mr. Sears, I'll hear closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly stated, the evidence shows that the man is a fanatic. He's not a fit father. He's not a fit husband. He's deprived the children. He's abusing the children. And he just should not have any custody at all. He should not even be allowed to see them. So what we're asking for in the beginning is what I think is right. We should have custody. We should have spousal and child support and the family home. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff's cause of action here is a blatant attempt at religious prejudice, and it shouldn't be allowed by this court. This is America. We don't judge people by what they believe. He's proved that he lives a wholesome lifestyle and a spiritual lifestyle as opposed to the racy and sex-craved lifestyle of the plaintiff. Your Honor, give custody to this father, award no spousal support, let the plaintiff go to work for a living. We thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel.
While Judge Keene reviews the testimony before Wren is about to render his decision.
All right, it is fundamental to the law that the fitness of a parent to have custody of minor children cannot be challenged on the basis that he maintains or teaches the children unpopular social or religious views. It's apparent to, I think, everyone that I have to address that issue in this case because the Moore marriage of 9 years hit a roadblock on the universal path. That path, which Mr. Moore chose to follow, clearly and inevitably had divorce court as its dead end. The parties here seek a divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty. That requires proof by a preponderance of the evidence. It is pleaded here by both Mrs. Moore and Mr. Moore, and it has been proven by Mrs. Moore. And the divorce she seeks in this court is granted on that grounds, mental cruelty. Now, the family home will be awarded to Mrs. Moore. Each party has taken $10,000 from this joint account, and the balance of the marital assets identified in the financial statements on file with this court amount to $31,000. they will also be equally divided. Now, the key issue that I must decide in this case, what is in the best interest of the Moore children, 7 and 9 years of age? I have no problem with this decision. Judicial decisions are sometimes very unpopular with the public, but I do not rule on the basis of public polls. Mr. Moore, your religious beliefs are your own, but the custody of your minor children will be with Mrs. Moore. I'll order supervised visitation rights for you, Mr. Moore. That'll be under a plan of implementation that I want filed with this court. Spousal and child support will be paid by Mr. Moore in the sum of $1,200 a month. This court stands in recess.
Divorce Court is a dramatization based on cases and issues raised in the family court